Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Dr. Dawn Michael. I'm just adjusting my camera right now. And I thought I would do a live session today because the last time I uploaded a video to YouTube, it took about 3 hours for it to upload. And I just thought, you know what? Why not come on live and answer some questions? A lot of you have sent me some amazing questions as well as comments that you leave in the box below. And I thought that I would go ahead and answer some of those for you today. If I happen to get some people on the chat and they want to pull up some questions, I'll go ahead and take those too. But of course, I didn't put out any previous information that I was going to go live. So I'll read the questions that I have right now and we'll see how it goes. All right. So I'm going to start with the first question. Now, how I compiled these questions is if it's been asked several times, maybe in different ways, then I've put it down as something that people really do want to know. And so that's what I'm going to start with. So the first one is, if my spouse does not want to do my fetish, should I go outside the marriage? Now, I'm also going to add that a couple people asked if I had already told my spouse and they agreed upon the fetish before marrying but decided not to do it, should I go outside the marriage? So those are kind of two conversations right there. So let me start with this first. So what happens if you have a fetish and maybe you didn't tell your spouse before you got married and you weren't really honest about it and you kind of kept it to yourself, but throughout the marriage, it kind of reared up and so you didn't know what to do and you tried to explain it to your spouse, but they completely freaked out. So you've kept it inside and then you're like, what do I do? Do I go outside the marriage? Do I, a lot of people have paid to see other people online. This is the problem with that. If you got into the marriage and you didn't go over the fetish with your spouse, then you can't expect for them to understand your fetish. And if you want to be able to have them understand your fetish, you have to find a way of explaining it to them, not when you're in a romantic situation, not when you're in the bedroom, but outside the bedroom in a very honest conversation. And the mistake that people make when they do this is they'll put that fetish onto their spouse, or they'll have some expectation that their spouse should go along with them. And right there, you're going to hit a brick wall. Sometimes not. Sometimes, spouses have been, all right, let's try it out. But remember, the fetish that you have is your fetish. And it's something that you've probably cultivated over a long time, something that you've put a lot of your time and thought into. And maybe you've watched a porn for years and years, and it's kind of become part of your sexual pattern. And here you're bringing it into the relationship. Well, your spouse really doesn't know anything about it. I mean, they haven't been exposed to it. It's not something that necessarily may turn them on. And in some instances, it may freak them out or turn them off. So how do you go about approaching them with it? And seeing if it's something that they would be interested in incorporating into the relationship. So, and you also have to be realistic. If you know your spouse, so if you think that it's something that is going to freak them out, you have to tell them in a way that isn't expecting them to do anything with you or to accommodate you, because really it's your fetish and you didn't tell them before you got married. So what you would do is you would sit down and have a conversation with them and say, listen, you know, I haven't told you everything about what I think about, what I fantasize about, but I just want to be upfront with you because I value our relationship. And I want to let you know that I don't expect you to do any of this with me, but it'd be helpful if you know. And that's how you start the conversation. Now, depending on what the fetish is, your spouse may be okay with some parts of it and may want to talk about it in the bedroom. So, you know, maybe you guys want to fantasize together, but I wouldn't push it any further. And you kind of have to see how they feel about it. And again, if you place that expectation on them, you're not going to be getting a partner that really is into it or wanting to get into it. And if it's something that maybe you have pushed onto your relationship and it's negatively affecting your relationship and your life, then it might be time for you to, you know, figure out how to maybe manage it or in some ways to get rid of it. And that's going to be the next question that I'm talking about. Let's see, I have a question. Let's see, I told. Okay. So this is a question that I have. I told my life partner, engaged, I'm male and she's female, that I'm exhibitionist. She accepted it. She's not, but it's fine with me showing off my body. That exhibitionist, that's one thing though, that if you're showing it to other people that don't know that you're doing it, that could be a very dangerous situation. And I've worked with people that have had that fetish and it's caused them a lot of problems. So that's something that you have to be aware of. Okay, let me get into the one of, can I get rid of an unwanted sexual fetish? I did a video on this. I think I did it about a week ago. And this is a question I get asked all the time, every week at least, is somebody who's struggling with an unwanted fetish, or maybe it's something that they have had in fantasy and they don't know if they should try it or just kind of experiment with it. And it really depends. What was that? Thanks, but it's not like that. Oh, okay. I got what you're saying. Okay. I'm sorry. I was reading the question there. So let's get back to my train of thought. So it's, again, if a fetish is not affecting you in a negative way, because some people can have fetishes and it doesn't affect them in a negative way, and they're okay with in their relationship. I always like to preface that. So if it is affecting you in a negative way, and people say, oh, I can't get rid of it, or it's not something I can get rid of, I was born with it, so on and so forth, that's not true. People are not born with a fetish. It's something that you develop along the way. Usually it's something that kicks in when you're a teenager and you're going through your second stage of development. It's something that may get in your head, and it can also happen a little bit later in life. But depending on what it is, you have created the fetish. You have turned it into something that is bigger than it is. And some people, which I've said in the other video, if you want to go back and watch it, some people have made it so much a part of their lives that it becomes part of their identity. And that can really create a problem in your life if now you're identifying and that's who you identify with, instead of you're this person and then maybe you have this particular sexual fetish or arousal. So just keep that in mind. So if you do want to get rid of it or you want to change it into something else, it is possible to do that, but it's about unraveling it and also not feeding it. Meaning, if you want to get rid of something or minimize it, then you have to take away the stimuli. So let's say that you have a particular fetish, you're watching porn, you're thinking about it constantly, you're masturbating to it. Right then and there, you are adding energy to that. And so, what you have to do is you have to decrease that. You have to take away maybe the device you're watching it on. You have to think of other things that arouse you. And so, you have to unravel from the particular fetish or the sexual pattern that you've developed around the fetish. So, yes, there are ways to minimize it or get rid of it, but you do have to follow a process and an understanding, and you have to understand that it also is very powerful, because you're talking about adrenaline and arousal, and if it gets into your brain, then automatically you're going to feel that. So you have to take a couple of deep breaths. You have to change your thought process and think about something else. And so it is challenging at first, but it can be done. Okay, so I'll get on to the next thing, but let me look at a couple of your questions to see what we have here. How long does it take to recover to a new sexual pattern? That's a good question. People have sexual patterns, especially if you develop it when you're younger. And a sexual pattern would be, this is one that I hear a lot. So a man and a woman get married and they are having a great sex life in the beginning, and it's active and it's often. And before they got married, he watched porn, and that was like his go-to thing, to watch porn. But once him and his girlfriend or spouse got married and the sex was good, he was, frequently having sex, so he wasn't watching porn. But what happens is, with most couples, after a couple years, sex is not, sorry, my phone's going, sex is not as consistent. And then he will go back to watching porn in between. And this can create some problems in the marriage if his wife, finds out about it, or she is threatened by it. And also, what happens is he developed a sexual pattern before he got in the marriage. So let's say that he watched porn and had an orgasm every day. Then he got married. Maybe him and his wife were having sex every day. Maybe it, went down to 3 days a week. Maybe it went down to one. So now his sexual pattern is no longer having a release every day. It's now having it once a day. And what happens is the body will react to it and will want to have that release because that is now the sexual pattern. When I work with couples, and this comes up when we're talking, it's really about the couple working together. So maybe they have sex a little more often, or maybe he has to slow down on the porn and the masturbation every day and make it every other day or once every third day. So yes, you can change your sexual pattern. You do it slowly, and it can be changed over time. So I hope I answered that question. Okay, let's see. Okay, so let me go back to my other questions on here. I have one, and believe it or not, I've gotten this a couple of times, this question. I'm not gay, but I like sleeping with men and cross-dressing. So this is where people get really confused. And, a person doesn't have to be gay to be aroused by same sex or cross-dressing. It could, because now we're talking about a sexual act. And this is what gets so confusing when someone gets turned on by a sexual act. Let's say they're watching porn or they happen to see something. Usually they're watching porn. And they see something that turns them on that they would maybe see as homosexual, but they're not gay. meaning they really wouldn't want to have a relationship. Let's just say we're talking about a man. They wouldn't want to have a relationship with a man. They wouldn't really necessarily be attracted to a man. They just happen to be attracted to a body part. And so that right there is arousal to a body part, or they're attracted to a sexual act. So that is aroused to a sexual act. That doesn't mean that you're gay. And this is actually a question I get all the time. I have a couple videos about this, and this is something that people just don't talk about. There isn't information on this, but I'd say with people watching porn more and more, this problem seems to be popping up more and more. I mean, I see people with this particular problem where they didn't have it years ago. So that's a whole nother conversation, but I do have videos on it. But for those of you who may be experiencing this, it doesn't mean you're gay, nor does it mean you're gay if you cross-dress. And cross-dressing is really a fetish. It could be that somebody likes the way that they look in women's clothing. They like the way that it feels. So there's could be many different levels. They like the look, they like the feel of it. They can change characters within themselves when they're dressed in it. They feel more feminine. A lot of it has to do with them feeling submissive when they cross-dress. That also, I'm going to do a video on that too, because I'm noticing that a lot more with people is this idea of feeling submissive sexually and how cross-dressing gives them permission to do that. Okay. So let's see. So another one that I get asked quite often is how often should a couple be having sex? So is there like a norm? And what I would say to that is I don't put an amount on any relationship. It really has to do with the individual relationship. So maybe when you first got married, how often did you have sex? And how much has it changed over the years? What is your normal pattern? That's really what we go off of when we talk about how often people have sex. Because someone could have sex a couple times a week, once a week, a couple times a month. And then the other question is, when does it become a sexless marriage? And how do you define a sexless marriage? And really, if it's been a couple of months that you're not having sex, it starts to get into almost being a sexless marriage. I mean, I know people who've been married that haven't had sex for years. And that's very painful because you want to be intimate with your spouse, and one spouse isn't interested, the other spouse may be, and then people are left with, what do I do? So that is a very painful situation that some couples go through. And I see a lot of couples that have that type of a marriage. And really, there's all different solutions to it. It really depends on how the couple wants to work through it. Let me take a minute to look at some of these questions we have here. Let's see. You know, that I'm not going to read it because it's quite graphic, but basically, one of the questions was about trauma from childhood and how that can create a fetish. And I mean, not all fetishes come from trauma, but certainly if someone has had trauma as a child, sexual trauma, that can manifest itself into a fetish or an arousal that they may not normally have had. And that's very difficult because what happens is the body gets used to it. and it reacts to it in its own way without the mind necessarily wanting it. So there's just a lot of confusion surrounding that. Sometimes people feel guilty about it. They don't know how to work through it, but you can recover from it. You can change the way that your pattern is. You can adjust it. You can certainly think about it in a different way so that you're not feeling guilty that you have those thoughts or that your body reacts that way. Remember, if abuse happened when you were younger, you didn't ask for it, and your body doesn't ask to react to it that way. But sometimes it does manifest itself as an arousal when a person is an adult. I did a video on that before, but I think that's a very important topic, and I think that it really could use a bigger discussion surrounding it, because unfortunately that happens to people and they don't know how to get rid of that arousal or the sexual pattern or the sexual fetish. I hope I answered that question for you. Let's see. Okay. How long would it take to recover from a deep-rooted fetish and engage in regular sex life? You know, that is really an individual issue. So it certainly depends on age, I will say that. How much it has taken over your life. If you are able to get aroused by other things. You know, sometimes when someone has a sexual fetish, that's the only thing that arouses them. And so you kind of have to explore if there's something else that arouses you. And so you slowly switch over to that. Sorry, my phone keeps going off here. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It can go away, not completely go away, but it can, let's just say, minimize. So let's say that the sexual fetish is just the only thing that turns you on, and you can't imagine anything else turning you on, and it's also become a part of who you are. So the first thing is understanding that your fetish is not who you are. So you don't have to identify with the fetish. It simply is a part of your life. Then you have to decide how much energy that you're putting into it, how much time you're putting into it, and start balancing out your life, doing things that take your mind away from it, doing other things in your life that you're passionate about. And so it is a slow process, and it is a different way of thinking about it. If you want to go through some of my videos, I do talk about it in more detail, and hopefully I answered a little bit of your question there. Okay, what do we have here? I'm not going to read some of these because they're a little more graphic. If you want to ask a question, try not to be too graphic. And okay, let me go back to this over here. I have another question that I get asked a lot, and that is, what's wrong with a husband watching porn? And again, it depends on the couple, the marriage, the relationship. One of the issues is if a man or a woman, but mostly men, if a man is watching porn and he's not having sex with his wife, then that's a problem in the relationship, and that's something that needs to be addressed. If the porn is affecting you in a way that is negative, where maybe now you're having problems getting aroused with your wife, then that again is it's negative because it is affecting the relationship. If you're not engaging in regular sex with your spouse, and you've had conversations with your spouse about that, and you feel that you're having a problem in the relationship with that, you may want to talk to them and say, I have a sexual pattern, if you had a sexual pattern of watching porn before we were together. And it's just something I do once in a while. You'd have to see how your spouse feels about it. But it is a touchy subject. And also, the more that you watch porn, the more that you want to watch porn. And so that can create a problem in the relationship. It also depends on what porn you're watching. And I say this to couples when they come to me and they have different sexual desires or arousals. If you're watching porn, depending on what the porn is, and you watch it a lot, you're expanding your mind sexually. You're bringing in uh, all kinds of different areas of arousal, and you're opening your mind up where your spouse probably hasn't had those experiences or maybe has never seen them. And so now you have two different areas of arousal. It's like one person, you've been aroused by this, and maybe it doesn't arouse you anymore. So you have to go to the next level and the next level and next level. And maybe your spouse, your wife, hasn't seen that, and her level of turn on is over here. So now the two of you are really on just completely different planes when it comes together. So what would happen is you really have to decrease watching the porn, and you have to basically try to turn it off. And if you still want to masturbate, that's fine, but masturbate to something that is a fantasy, so you're not getting yourself so aroused by that, so that when you go to be intimate with your spouse, it's not as exciting. That creates a problem. So I hope I answered that question. Let's see. Let me go down here. How long does it take to recover? Okay. I want my wife to humiliate me. Believe it or not, I actually get a lot of questions on that about humiliation, submission. Um, yeah, that's a difficult one, because if that's something that's been your sexual fantasy or your fetish, and your wife has no idea what that is or how much that turns you on, that's going to be a very delicate conversation. But you could try to have a conversation with her about it and explain why you like to be humiliated. But you really need to understand why you like to be humiliated first. That's kind of the problem with getting a spouse involved, is sometimes people don't understand why they are aroused by something, and they really need to understand what about it arouses them. I know for some men, being submissive, some of the arousal with that is either sometimes they have erectile dysfunction, sometimes they have anxiety when it comes to sex. And sometimes they just don't want to do the work. They want their wife to take over. They want to be able to be relaxed. And so they fall into a submissive, they want to be submissive, except they don't really understand why they like that. And so when they tell their wife that, she doesn't understand. And so it becomes really confusing. So if you have some type of a sexual issue, it's really important that you understand it first, so that you can then explain to her what it is. I'll take a few more questions, and then I am going to end it there. This has been fun, though. I've never done a live chat before, and I'm happy to see that some of you are getting involved. And you know what? I might do more of these in the future. What do you think? Is that something that you'd be interested in? Maybe I can come on and do some more open questions. let me know if that's something that might interest you. Let's see. Let's see, what protections would be applicable to get back to normal once stopping to watch porn months? Not really sure I understand that question. What projections would be applicable to get back to normal once stop watching porn months? Maybe you can explain that a little further. Thank you, Michael Shaw. Thank you, Doctor. Yes, these live chats are interesting. Great. I will definitely try to do more. Tassos. Yes, definitely more. We can put new questions in the comments. Yes, that would be great. If you guys want to put new questions in the comments, that would be helpful. A lot of you send me emails, and just so you know, I do read them, and I do read the comments under the videos. I just don't have time to answer them all, so it's easier to just get on live and answer your questions. Okay, here's one. How to get rid of cuckold fetish? Does this fetish have its origins in some part of development? No, it doesn't. It does not. No, you are not born a cuckold. It's something that is it's a fetish that you've somehow acquired, and different people acquire it different ways. One of the running themes with cuckold that I've worked with so many people that have had cuckold relationships, and one of the things that the men say that's happened to them at some point in their life is they were either with a girlfriend that cheated on them or a wife that cheated on them. It had something to do with cheating, and the emotional pain of that cheating made it easier for them to now want to be in control. And so they didn't cheat anymore by picking the person that they had sex with. That's one aspect of it. It's very complicated. There's definitely different levels. What do you think of? That's a good question from Isabel. What do you think of the widespread normalization of BDSM? Do you think it can be harmful for it to be normalized, especially introducing the popular dig fetish to young girls? Yeah, I actually have noticed over the years, especially what is coming out in porn and all that, it's become really violent. It wasn't that way before. And what's happening is younger people are able to view this and they think that it's normal. And it's not about that is a really a deeper discussion that I think I will do a video on. That's a great question. I think it could be very harmful to young girls. And I have seen younger women that are normalizing it and thinking that it is something that they have to do. And it's caused them a lot of problems. I mean, realistically, if a couple is going to be involved in that, they have to know each other well. They have to, have great communication. And the person who is the submissive, realistically has to have a lot of trust in the person who is being the dom. And so there's a whole psychological component to that. And I don't think that is healthy for young women who don't know themselves to feel like they need to be involved in that. So I'll leave it at that question. Let's see, I'll take one more and then I am going to have to go for today. Let's see. Let's see what's here. More questions on cuckolding. Yeah, Sigmund Freud. Not really a huge fan of Sigmund Freud. Let's let's see what else. What thoughts here? Interracial aspect of cuckolding. There's a lot on that, on the interracial aspect of it. I think that has to do with the association of masculinity and being dominated by a man that is masculine. I think that's where that association comes into, and yeah, that's there's a whole that's a whole nother topic there. But anyway, I just wanted to come on and answer some of your questions, and I've had a good time with this, and I've really appreciated your questions, and I think I will definitely do this again. So thanks for hopping on this morning and joining me, and I hope all of you have an excellent day. As you know, I believe everyone deserves to have a healthy sex life, and so do you. Bye-bye.